So, how do we really know if a new medicine is a game-changing lifesaver or just a hopeful guess? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the incredible story of how we figured that out. It's a journey that takes us from ancient hunches and some pretty lucky accidents, all the way to the powerful science that shapes our health every single day.
I mean, think about it. It seems like such a simple question, right? But finding a reliable answer is honestly one of the greatest achievements in modern science. Is a cure real just because we believe in it? Or because a doctor has a good feeling? Or is there a way to actually prove it?
Well, the answer, as we're about to see, lies in the slow, sometimes messy, but absolutely brilliant evolution of one single idea, the clinical trial. It's the powerful tool we built to finally separate hope from hard fact.
Okay, so to find the start of this story, we have to go way, way back. Because the basic instinct to compare one thing against another, well, that's not new at all. It's an idea that's been flickering in the background for thousands of years.
But just look at this timeline for a second. We're seeing these little sparks of insight, but they're separated by centuries, even millennia. So why did it take so long? Well, for most of human history, medicine was all about authority and tradition, not really about testing things systematically. Progress was slow, measured in entire lifetimes, not just a few years.
Now, these early examples weren't exactly formal, lab coat-wearing trials, but they were absolutely crucial first steps. You have King Nebuchadnezzar running what might be the first ever public health experiment, comparing two diets and just seeing which one worked better. Fast forward a couple thousand years, and a battlefield surgeon named Ambrose Pare literally runs out of the standard horrible treatment for gunshot wounds, boiling oil. Yikes. He's forced to improvise with a gentler ointment. He was probably expecting the worst, but the next morning he discovered that the soldiers who got his new dressing were actually healing while the others were feverish and in agony. He had accidentally stumbled upon a core scientific principle: direct comparison.
For the next couple of hundred years, that idea of comparison was still pretty informal. But then, in the middle of the 18th century, a humble ship's surgeon on a British naval vessel was about to change everything.
His name was James Lind, and his #1 enemy was scurvy. This was a truly horrific disease that was killing way more sailors than battles were. Lind was appalled by the sheer number of deaths, and he decided he was going to test all the most promising cures in a systematic, organized way.
And this is where the genius comes in. The beauty of Lind's experiment was its fairness. He took 12 sailors who all had pretty much the same symptoms, put them in the same part of the ship, and gave them the exact same food. The only thing he changed was the specific treatment he gave to each pair of sailors. By controlling everything else, he could isolate the one variable that actually mattered. It was simple, it was elegant, and it was so powerful.
You can just feel the excitement in Lind's own words, can't you? The results were just completely undeniable. While most of the treatments did absolutely nothing, the two sailors who got oranges and lemons had what he called a rapid and dramatic recovery. In fact, one of them was back on duty in just 6 days. This was it. For the first time ever, a controlled experiment had delivered a clear, life-saving answer.
So Lind laid the foundation, but the house wasn't built yet. It would actually take another 200 years and several more brilliant innovations to build what we now call the gold standard, the randomized controlled trial, or RCT. Let's break down what those fancy words actually mean. Okay, the first big upgrade was the idea of the placebo. Researchers started to realize that, our minds are powerful. The very act of getting any treatment can make people feel better. That's the famous placebo effect. So to find out if a drug really works on a chemical level, you have to compare it against a fake or dummy treatment. This is how you separate the actual effect of the drug from the psychological effect of just being treated.
But even with a placebo, there's another problem: human bias. Think about it. If you know you might be getting a real new drug, you might convince yourself you're feeling better. And doctors, being human, might subconsciously look for tiny signs of improvement in the patients they know got the real deal. The solution? It's called blinding. In a double-blind trial, neither the patient nor the doctor has any idea who's getting the real drug and who's getting the placebo until the trial is totally over. It's the ultimate way to make sure the results are truly objective.
And the final piece of the scientific puzzle was randomization. This tackles one last sneaky source of bias. Who gets into which group in the first place? If a doctor gets to choose, they might subconsciously put the sickest patients, or maybe the healthiest patients, into the new treatment group, which would totally skew the results. The solution, championed by a statistician named Austin Bradford Hill, was to just remove human choice from the equation. Let pure chance decide. By using a random process, like flipping a coin or using sealed envelopes, you create two groups that are as similar as possible, right from the start. That is a truly fair test.
So what happens when you put all of that together? You take a control group, you add in placebos, you use double blinding, and you randomize the whole thing. What you get is a complete revolution in medicine. This all came together in a landmark 1946 trial for a drug called streptomycin, which was a potential treatment for tuberculosis. And just look at the difference this made. Research went from being based on guesswork and stories to a rigorous, objective system. This was truly the birth of the modern clinical trial as we know it.
So at this point, the science was becoming incredibly solid. We had this amazing tool for finding the truth. But there was another evolution that had to happen right alongside it, and it was just as important: the development of a moral compass.
Was it okay to do literally anything in the name of science, as long as your experiment was perfectly designed? History tragically was about to show that the answer was a resounding no.
You see, a powerful tool without any ethical guidelines can be incredibly dangerous. Horrifying abuses in research, from Nazi experiments during World War II to the Tuskegee study in the United States, made it painfully clear that scientific progress can never, ever come at the cost of human dignity and safety.
So, in response to these terrible events, the global community came together to build a framework of protection. The Nuremberg Code, born from the post-war trials, established the absolute necessity of voluntary consent. The Declaration of Helsinki gave doctors clear principles to follow. The Belmont Report defined the core ethics of research. And today, we have something called good clinical practice, which is basically the universal rulebook that ensures the rights and safety of patients are at the absolute heart of every single trial.
And that brings us pretty much to the present day. But it's important to remember that this journey of discovery, this quest to build a better, safer way to find the truth, is far from over.
I mean, we've come such a long way. We've gone from a king comparing diets and a ship's doctor handing out lemons to a global standard for research that is randomized, controlled, blinded, and, most importantly, ethical. We've built this incredibly sophisticated machine for generating knowledge we can actually trust.
This whole story brings to mind this fantastic quote from Aldous Huxley. The fundamental question, how do we know what really works? That question is ancient. It hasn't changed a bit. But the tools we've built to answer it, refined over centuries of trial, error, and hard-won wisdom, well, they are completely different, and they are infinitely more powerful. The search for truth always continues.